Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sherry Noller, and I am with the Missouri Small Business Development Center, or the SBDC. We have two of our business consultants with us today from the Missouri SBDC at Missouri State University in Springfield. We have Center Director Crystal Irons and Regional Business Consultant and Tech Consultant as well, Sandra Smart. They will be presenting for us today. Just a real quick note for housekeeping. We would like it if you would post any questions that you have throughout the presentation in the chat. And as time allows at the end, we will go through and answer those questions and also provide an opportunity to unmute yourselves to ask any questions as well. But we will go ahead and get started, and I will pass it off to Crystal Irons.
All right, thanks, Sherry. Good morning. Again, yes, thank you guys so much for joining us. Sandra and I are excited to be able to offer this QuickBooks overview to help you manage your disaster loan funds. So I'm going to walk through a few things on the desktop side, and then I'm going to throw it over to Sandra, and she's going to walk you through some similar things on the online version, and then, like Sherry mentioned, you'll have a chance to ask us any questions that you might have. So I'm going to stop my video and share my screen so you all can follow along. Let me get this sharing. All right, so hopefully everybody can see my screen here. So the first thing I want to do is show you, when you get your loan funds, how to add those into QuickBooks. So I'm going to show you how to add a loan account and then log your deposit. So let's say you are just receiving your PPP funding and you want to add that loan account. So you can go to your chart of accounts by clicking that on your home screen, or of course you can go up here to lists and go to chart of accounts. At the bottom, you're going to click the account button and you're going to say new. You can choose a loan here, or you can go into other account types and you can choose a long-term liability. So even though there is some forgiveness on the PPP side, we still suggest going ahead and setting this up either as a loan or a long-term liability. And then, of course, as we learn more about the forgiveness, we'll continue to kind of keep everybody updated on how to write that off and make changes there. So I'm going to name this PPP loan. You can see here's the account type, long-term liability. And then I'm going to click Save and Close. Oh, I've already got that one in there, sorry. There we go. Okay, so now you can see this Paycheck Protection Program loan. And of course, if you have an EIDL, you would do the same thing. Go to Account, New, and choose a long-term liability there. Okay, so now what you want to do is you need to log the amount of the loan. So you've received this in your bank account. So as you go in and try to mirror what's happening in your bank account, you're probably going to add that deposit. If you have it set up through bank feeds, of course, you would add your deposit through your regular bank feeds. And I'm going to record this through a deposit. So I'm going to click Record Deposits. It is not connected to one of these payments, so I'm going to hit Cancel here. Make sure that you're paying attention to your bank account, when it's being deposited to. This is a sample company, so we're using a date into the future. So I'm going to say that this happened on 12/01/2024. That would be the date that these funds hit my bank account. Let's say I got this from Commerce Bank. And then I'm going to use that Paycheck Protection Loan Program account that I created. And the amount, let's say it was $50,000. And then I'm going to say save and close. So now when I go into my chart of accounts, we can find our Paycheck Protection loan. And you can see there's a $50,000 deposit. So that's how you would add your loan to your QuickBooks company. Now that you have your loan in, you need to be tracking how you're using those funds. And so we're going to talk through class accounting. Class accounting is a feature that just allows you to track things at even more of a detailed level as you do classify it into different expense accounts or all of your other accounts through your chart of accounts. So in order to turn class tracking on, you want to click on Edit, Preferences, and it is at the very top under the Accounting Preferences, and then you're going to click on Company Preferences. And you want to make sure that this little box here, Use Class Tracking for Transactions, is turned on. And because many of you are probably just going to do this for the period of time that you're using these funds, you don't have to tell it to prompt you to assign classes because we only want to assign classes in this situation when we are trying to track the use of our actual loan funds. And so I don't want it to yell at me every time I enter any action, so I am not going to click that button. And then I'm going to say OK. So now we've got class tracking on. The next thing you need to do is you need to then set up some classes. So this is a list. Once you choose to turn on class tracking, you will have a class list show up in your list menu. So we're going to click Class List. And you can see I've already got the EIDL set up here, EIDL. There are some other classes already set up under this sample company, and that's because this company is using class tracking overall in their QuickBooks company. So now I'm going to add another class. At the bottom, I'm going to click the Class button and click New. And now I'm going to set up a class for my PPP loan. And I'm going to click OK. And so now we have both the EIDL loan that we can track as well as the PPP loan that we can track here in our class list. So now that we've turned class tracking on and we've set up our classes, we need to then start assigning transactions to our classes that we want to use our loan funds for. So as you write checks, as you enter credit card charges, and if you're doing this through your bank feeds, you're going to be using those classes. So let me show you how to do that. So let's say we're going to write a check. So I'm going to go to Write Checks. And let's say I'm going to write a check for our utility bill. So we can use our PPP loan funds for our utilities. That is a use of funds under that program. So let's say I have a $1,500 utility bill that I am paying. So I'm going to write my check just like normal, throw it in my utilities account, just like I always do. And the one difference here is that you're going to tab over into this class column, and I'm going to assign it to my PPP class. And then I'm going to say save and close. So now let me show you how to enter it through enter credit card charges. Very similar. So I'm going to click on enter credit card charges. Of course, you want to pay attention, make sure you're using the right card here. And so now I'm going to record a credit card charge. Say I'm going to purchase some fuel here. Some fuel. And I'm actually going to assign this to my EIDL. So it's a working capital loan, general operating expenses. So I'm going to assign that to my EIDL loan. And I'm going to save and close. So now we've actually started to use class tracking to identify what we're using our funds for. So let me show you how you can see how you have used those funds. So I'm going to click on Reports, Company and Financial. Of course, you could go to your Report Center here as well. Company and Financial. And once you turn that class tracking on, you will see a profit and loss by class. And so I'm actually going to run this for a little bit of the month of December 2024. So you can see, as I mentioned, this company is already using class tracking, and so they do have some things already being classified. But if you look here under EIDL, you can see that we've used $50. There's our automobile fuel expense. And the total expense that we've used here, $50. And then you can also see the 1,500 utilities that we paid out of our PPP funds. And so you can continue to monitor how much money you are spending under these classes. And so this is how you would continue to look and see how you've used those funds. All right. Now I want to show you how to make a loan payment through QuickBooks. So I'm going to get out of here by pushing escape. Don't want to save that. And I'm going to go to write checks. So let's say it's now coming time, we need to make a payment on our PPP loan because not all of it got forgiven. So now we're probably into the future a little more. And I'm going to write a check to Commerce Bank. $500 loan payment. And here you need to know what your breakdown between principal and interest is. And so for the account, you want to hit that Paycheck Protection Loan Program for the principal amount of the loan payment. So I'm going to say $450. There's no need to classify this transaction. And then, of course, you're going to have an interest amount, and mine's going to be $50. And again, I am not going to class that portion of the transaction either because I am not wanting to assign that interest to my paycheck protection. This is just an overall payment to that loan. And then I'm going to say save and close. And so now if I go to my chart of accounts, if I can get it to open, here we go. You can see on our Paycheck Protection Program loan, we have paid that $450 loan payment, which has now taken our balance due back to Commerce Bank down. And so that's how you would make a loan payment on either your EIDL or your Paycheck Protection loan. All right, I want to talk about one more thing on the desktop version, and that is how to utilize class tracking with your payroll. So in this particular company, as I mentioned, they are using class tracking. And so if I go into their payroll center here, and I want to click on their employees, get into their payroll setup. If I click on the payroll, you can see that because this company is already using class tracking, each employee is classed on, basically what part of the business they work. So you saw landscaping, there was a design. And so I don't want to change any of this because this company is using class tracking for a reason. Could be that they're wanting to try to monitor how their expenses are for payroll so that they can use it in a work comp audit or something like that. So we're not going to assign class tracking here through their actual payroll. I'm going to show you how to adjust it through a journal entry, but I wanted you to know how to be able to see that. So when you turn class tracking on in your payroll setup under employees, you will also have this ability here. And Sandra will show you how to adjust it there whenever she walks through the online version. So the first thing you need to do when trying to classify your payroll is you need to know where your payroll expenses are showing up. So I'm going to go back to my reports, and I'm going to go to my company and financial by class. And I'm going to choose the date of my payroll, which was December 15th, 2024. This is the date I'm going to run my payroll. And you can see that all of the payroll is being classified under payroll expense. So now what you need to do is you need to pull a payroll report so that you can see exactly what expenses are making up those payroll expenses. So I'm going to go back to reports. I'm going to go to employees and payroll. And just a general payroll summary will provide you with that information. And I'm going to pull a payroll summary for that specific pay date, which is 12/15/2024. These dates right. Okay, so this is my most recent payroll here. And if you understand how the Paycheck Protection Program works, we are able to take our gross pay as payroll costs. We are also able to take our state taxes. So we are not able to take our company or our employer federal unemployment or our company Medicare and Social Security amounts. And so those are not applicable to be classed as a use of funds under the Paycheck Protection Program. But we can take our total gross pay, which is that $8,956.92. And we can also take our California unemployment, and then this of $100, and then this $20 in California, they must have an employee training tax. So we can add all of those together, which comes out to $9,076.92. And that's the amount that we actually want to assign to our Paycheck Protection Program use of funds. So I'm going to make a journal entry for that amount to classify that. So I'm going to go up to Company. I'm going to choose Make General Journal Entries. I'm going to use the same date as my payroll date, which is 12/15/2024. And if you remember, we looked and saw that all of our payroll expenses were hitting that payroll expense account. So I'm going to type in here payroll expense, choose that account. And I'm actually going to credit the payroll costs that I can classify to PPP. So $9,076.92. Anytime we do a journal entry, it's always a good idea to make a memo as to why you're making that journal entry. So I'm going to put classify payroll to PPP funds. And on this line only, I'm going to leave the classification blank, because what I'm wanting to do is take out the amount with a credit to be able to classify payroll. So now I'm going to use payroll expense again, and it's actually going to be a debit. And so this is going to allow me to show the expense under my Paycheck Protection Program use of funds. So this is the amount that we are actually going to classify. So when doing it this way, you're going to classify the debit portion of your journal entry. And so in essence, we're making a $0 journal entry, but it's because we want to make sure that we can show the classification of this PPP. So then I'm going to choose Save and Close. This is our payroll summary that we had open. I'm going to close this. And so here is our profit and loss that we had up earlier. And I'm going to pull up December again for the dates, just like we looked at earlier, including my payroll date. So now when I scroll down, you can see our total expenses under our Paycheck Protection Program now are the $10,576.92. And that is because we were able to assign our payroll amount with that debit classified under PPP. And it's okay, unclassified amount here. This is the credit part of the journal entry that we just did, but we are still able to see that the payroll was classified as usual under design, landscaping, and overhead. So we didn't mess up the classification they were already using. We just added to it through that journal entry. So now we have essentially used $10,576 of our Paycheck Protection loan funds. And so this is how you would start to track the use of your loan proceeds on the desktop version. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will throw it over to Sandra to walk through some things on the online version. And then again, we'll take any questions that you all might have as well. So Sandra?
Great, thank you, Crystal. I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick. So now I'm going to walk through the different steps that Crystal showed you in the desktop version for the online version. As I'm going through, I will note a couple different ways to get in to add specific accounts or to make different entries. For those of you that use it in different ways, you can use whichever way you're accustomed to or works best for you. So the first thing we're going to do is set up that loan account for that PPP. To do that, we need to add an account to your chart of accounts, and you can access your chart of accounts by going up in the upper right-hand corner to the gear. And going to the chart of accounts. Or you can go over to the left nav to accounting and just click on accounting. Either way will take you in. Then we're going to go up to new in the upper right-hand corner. We're going to go over to account type, and as Crystal shared earlier, we're going to go down to long-term liability. We'll add the loan account name in there, so it can be PPP. We'll go down to choose a date on when you want QuickBooks to start tracking. I'm going to show other, because chances are most of you didn't get your PPP funds today. And then you can select the date that you did receive your PPP funds. I'm not going to put a date in there, but again, select the date when you did receive your PPP funds. And you'll click Save and Close. I'm going to cancel out of this because I already have a PPP account set up. I'm going to scroll down here and you'll be able to see it in your long-term liability section. A couple different ways to get the funds that you did receive from your PPP into your QuickBooks balance. If you have the online banking feed, you will need to go in to banking, and in that feed you will need to assign that deposit to the PPP account that you just created. And you will have to create the account prior to going in or add a new account when you're going in to match that. If you don't have the online banking feed set up, you can go up to the Quick Create, which is the plus new button in the upper left-hand corner. You can go over to Bank Deposit. And then you can select the account, put in the appropriate date, and then when you're adding the funds, the account down here, you select PPP. I always put a quick description in there. And then you can go over and add the amount of your PPP loan, click Save and Close. And then if we go back down here, you can see that deposit is now the new QuickBooks balance for your PPP account. And then to start tracking, if you have the Plus version or the advanced version of QuickBooks Online, you're able to set up class tracking. And to do that, you can go up to the gear. Under your list, go to All List. Actually, I already have class tracking set up. Let me back up on that. Go up to your gear, go to Account, Company Settings. Yours is going to probably say Account and Settings. You will go down to Advanced. And when you click on Advanced, you're going to see a Categories on the left-hand side. You can click on the pencil, you can click on the categories, and here's where you can set up and start tracking the classes if you're not already. If you're not tracking, this is what it's going to show, off and off. You simply click the Track Classes. And as Crystal shared earlier, since this will only be for a shorter period of time, if you're not already tracking classes, you definitely probably don't want to check the warn me when a transaction isn't assigned to a class, since there are limited uses for the PPP funds. I always leave it as 1 to each row in a transaction when you're assigning classes. That way it allows you flexibility if you needed to assign different lines to different classes. Once you're done with that, click Save, click Done. And now we'll go back up to the gear under that list, All Lists, and then you can click Classes. I've already added these, but it's very simple. You go up here and you click the green New button, type in the name, and click Save, and it will appear in your classes list. And if you happen to forget to do this, you can always add the class when you're assigning transactions. It's very, very simple. So now we're going to go in and assign different transactions to a class. You can go up to the Quick Create. And let's say we're going to write a check. I'm going to go here to Ozark Electric because, as Crystal shared earlier, utilities is a way to, or good use of the PPP funds. Make sure you have the appropriate bank account selected, the correct payment date, add your check number in there, or save it to print later based on that. Come down here and you can select your utilities, the same account that you would normally use. There's a bill showing up over here. I'm not going to pay that bill today. I'm going to pay a different one for $500. And then in the class section, you select PPP. And as I shared earlier, if you forgot to add the classes prior to going into the transaction, you can do an add new right here, type the name of that class in and click save. And then save and close. And you can use your normal pathway for your transactions, just making sure that you're assigning the appropriate class for qualifying uses of the funds. We'll go over here to the left nav to reports. You can always search at the top by class to show the reports that are available by class. We're going to look at the profit and loss by class. I'm going to do this year to date. Make sure you click Run Report once you change the date. And you can see on the profit and loss by class report, you have not specified, so that's where you did not assign any class to the transactions. There's also PPP, and you can see interest paid, and we'll take a look at that. If, let's say you have a mortgage, and mortgage interest is allowable. Use of funds under the PPP, so we'll take a look at that transaction here in just a few minutes. Payroll expenses are also on here. Utilities. And then rent and lease, depending upon if you're renting or if you have that mortgage payment. So you can quickly tell exactly how much money has been spent from the PPP. I have idle advance here, and then the one class that I just created. Now we're going to go to the payroll if you have payroll. So go to the gear, go over to payroll settings. You can go here to preferences, or you can go right here to accounting under preferences. You should already have this set up as far as your wage expense accounts and which accounts you want that information to go into. Your tax expense accounts will all be set up, but down here at the bottom, you have classes. Do you assign classes to transactions? And if you do, one of the two bottom ones will be checked. If you don't, it's going to say I don't use classes for payroll transactions. On this one, I'm saying I use different classes for different employees. Click OK. Then it's going to ask you, it will give each employee's name, and this is just a sample company. So I've only got 2 in here. And based on the classes that you have set up, you can go in and select which class. I'm assigning both of these to PPP, clicking OK. And now it just takes you back to the summary where you can go down here and verify under the classes that the correct employees are classified the way that you want them. Click OK. And now it takes you back to the preferences screen. So when you process payroll, because you have classified the employees as PPP, all of the funds applicable to each of those employees are going to be included in the accounts that you have specified in your preferences. So we're going to go back to reports really quick here. I'm going to do the by class, change the date. And we can see that we've got payroll expenses, and under that we have taxes, and under that we have wages, salary. This particular sample company has several more categories of breakdown on this, but the taxes are all lumped in the taxes. And you can see right here, we're showing that there's $317.30 that are classified as PPP. We need to go take a look at that and see what that breakdown is to see if that's classified correctly, and then make an adjusting entry if it's not, to move it over to the not specified and to take it out of the PPP. So we'll go back over to reports. You can also scroll back up to the top when you're in the P&L and go back to the reports page. We're going to go down under the payroll, and we're going to select payroll summary by employee. And then you need to select the appropriate date range. So if you've had your PPP for the last 4 weeks and you're trying to make some adjusting entries, you'll need to specify the date range so that you have the appropriate numbers. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and I'm going to look at that employer taxes and contributions. And as Crystal shared earlier, the FUTA, or the federal unemployment, is not eligible for the PPP use, along with the employer portion of the Social Security and Medicare. For these particular employees, it's not showing that there's any state unemployment insurance on there. So that $317.30 is the employer portion of the federal taxes, which are not allowable under the PPP. So we need to make an entry, move those out of that class. We're going to go up to the Quick Create, which is that plus new in the upper left-hand corner. We're going to go over to Journal Entry, which is on the far right column under Other. And we're going to do a journal entry. That pay period was the 15th. So I'm going to select 5/15. I'm going to type in payroll. And I'm just going to go to taxes here because that's where it was before. I'm going to put that $317.30 in here. And what I'm doing is I'm just doing a $0 transaction, as Crystal shared in the example that she gave earlier, just to move this $317.30 out of the PPP classification and into the uncategorized classification. On the description, I'm going to put classify PPP funds on there. And on this one, I'm not going to put a class on. I'm going to select the exact same account. I'm going to do a credit for that. And then I am going to select the PPP class for that one. Save and close. Now I'm going to go back to the report. And the profit and loss by class is right down here. You can always click this star to put it up at the top in your favorites, so you have easy access to it and you're not trying to search for it every time. And again, make sure if you're changing that report period that you do click Run Report. So now you can see, based on the transaction that we just did, we have $634.60 in the not specified, and that $317.30 that was classified as PPP is now out of there, and you have a true balance of what you've used in the PPP funds. So I mentioned earlier about entering a mortgage payment that would qualify for the interest portion of it to be used for the PPP. You can go up to the Quick Create again. You can say, I'm going to write a check, depending upon how you have it in your online books. I'm going to select this check right here to ABC Bank, making sure that I have the correct banking account selected, the correct payment date. And then, as Crystal shared earlier, you have to know what your principal portion is and what your interest portion is. So you go down and select, this says interest paid. Somebody else might have in their books, you know, just interest expense, but making sure that you're selecting that expense there. Quick loan interest description, what that is, and then you can classify that portion as PPP. The principal portion, you will need to select the bank, loan for the category, loan principal, put that principal portion in there, and since principal is not eligible for use of PPP funds, you do not put a class in there. Then you can click Save and Close. We'll go back to the reports. And then you can see with that transaction where you made a mortgage payment, here is the interest portion that's eligible for PPP, and it falls underneath the PPP class. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen right now, and we'll take a look at the chat to see what questions have come in.